Good morning, everybody. This is Marty from Dog's Blog in the Noontime Report of the Frank Carson et al. Trial on October 19, 2018. 9 o'clock this morning, actually coming in prior to 9 o'clock, I saw one of the jurors, and apparently she was the only one that came in at 9 o'clock to be here at 9 o'clock. They had rescheduled them sometime late last night to come in at 10 o'clock. There was a conflict with one of the attorneys, so the jury was not coming up until 10 o'clock. But at 9 o'clock, Walter Wells was here for his continued arraignment or whatever they're doing with him at this point. And Marlissa Ferreira and Percy Martinez had gone into chambers around 9:05. They were quickly out at 9:07. I saw the judge come out and get her calendar, so that obviously they were scheduling something. And the continuation date was December 7th, 2018 at 9 a.m. So Walter Wells, December 7th, 2018. Remember that. That's Pearl Harbor Day. So then we just kind of lollygagging around until the jury came up at 10:03. The judge on the bench was 2:05. Corey Brown was on the stand. And Marlissa Ferreira is doing redirect on Corey Brown again. And on the overhead, she's talking about picture number 554, which is the lot by Poppencork. And she put side-by-side pictures of 554 and 557. And I didn't catch the dates on those pictures. But one of them was from 2000, I believe, 15. Corey Brown was pointing to the right hand of the lot on 557. There were some lighter objects along the fence line in the wall. On 554, he says it looks different. On 555, it doesn't show that debris. And if I remember correctly, 555 is I'm running off of memory here, so I'm not sure. 555 was from May of 2012. It was like 18 days after the alleged removal date of the body from the Poppencork lot. Also in the next picture in 556 that she put up, there was no debris also in that one. That one was in 2012 also. It was later on. It was like 4 months later. They did note a rectangular shape in the ground in one of the pictures. I didn't catch which one it was. And they talked about no shadow along the wall. And the whole thing didn't make sense to me. I don't know why she was doing what she was doing here, but I guess she has her reasons. Along with 557, there was no shadow along the wall. Well, that's because the angle of the sun at the time of day that those pictures were taken. Many objections, massive objections by the defense on this. She's having a hard time getting this information out. She was referring to some of the questions that were asked by the defense during a cross. And did he do an evidence review of the clothes of where Corey Kaufman might have been buried at Poppencork, and where it was dumped at Mariposa, and the comparisons is what she's getting at, I guess. And it was, and he said no. And was there any information that Corey Kaufman was aground at Poppencork in 2012? He said there was no information at that time. Talking about the blue insert, the foot insert in the boot, was it in the boot? He said no when he opened up the package. It was in the bag. He never compared the insert to the other boot to see if it would fit. Greg Jones assisted him on the investigation and the trip to New York to interview Christine DiFilippo. He was talking about contracted out some work the Sheriff's Office did to the Department of Justice and the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. He said the Sheriff's Office paid their hourly wage. He worked with task force previous in this case, Previous to this case, I should say, let me rephrase that, because that's previous to this case. He had worked with a gang task force, with the FBI gang task force, and that was with Kurt Bunch and Steve Jacobson on that same task force. Again, all throughout this questioning, there was a lot of objections that were being sustained. She just couldn't get the questions out right. And again, she kept asking about this gang task force, and it kept getting objections. She asked him if there's any time that Kurt Bunch worked with the sheriff's office on a homicide cases. And he was aware of about 5 cases that Kurt Bunch had worked on that he was involved with. Kurt Bunch worked on cases prior to them being filed. He worked on cases, of course, he worked on them after the charges were filed. In addition to Investigator Mariscal worked on some homicide cases with the sheriff's office, and he believed to be about 3 cases that he was aware of. He also, pre-filing of the case, he worked with Steve Jacobson on some other suspected. The judge made it clarified they need to be called suspected 180 homicide cases. Again, pre-filing with Steve Jacobson, maybe 1 case. Corey Brown said he is regularly on-call officer for homicide calls that come out off hours with the sheriff's office. Asked why he's not the investigator in court sitting next to Marlissa Ferreira in this case, he says he is still working active cases. So that he has other cases that he's working on, things that are going on. So he's not the designated investigator to sit with the DA in court like they're allowed to do. He was asked if he told Cherie Hendricks in Mariposa County that Corey Kaufman had been to Mariposa, and he said never. He never said anything along that lines. But he did say that Frank Carson had been in Mariposa County. He had phone records and also asked Cherie Hendricks if Corey Kaufman had been located in the area. He was asked if he told Cherie Hendricks the Frank Carson phone had been located or pinged in Mariposa County. He did not recall. Again, he said that he had Corey Kaufman's records prior to them finding of the located. There was an objection to a question that was there, and I don't remember the exact question, but there was her say. And Judge Zuniga sustained the question, and Marlissa Ferreira again wanted to start arguing with the judge. My understanding is last night, just to take a pause here, I had left the courtroom already. They were just talking about some general stuff, and the judge took, after everybody in the gallery had left the courtroom, the judge took Marlissa Ferreira to task about her demeanor in court, her demeanor with the judge, her attitude with the judge, her making all these faces. And when I say she's bouncing in the seat all the time, she's literally bouncing in the seat and doing some of the things that she's doing. The judge says she's very close to holding her in contempt. Not that I think she'd really do it. So the judge really took her to task on that last night. He was asked if he ever told or requested DOJ to take soil samples, and he did. He said he asked, and he gave the name of the gentleman, and I can't, Hamiel or something like that. The gentleman, he did testify earlier, but he did not take any samples, soil samples at Poppencork. Hamiel, I think is what he said. And he had asked him, but he did not do that. On 8/15 and 15, that was the day they did the walkthrough of Woody on the Poppencork lot. It was a DOJ crime scene, not Corey Brown's crime scene. So it was up to them to do as they saw fit. He says he's done about 170 homicide cases. He has gone to other states to do interviews. And he was not aware of anybody that had gone to Australia or Tennessee to do any interviews in this case. the jury was sent out around 11:34. It looks like I paused my recorder and I didn't start it, so I don't know where I ended off at. But they're talking about pictures of the pop and cork, the yard. There's some palm trees in the back of the yard. I don't know where any of this is going. It doesn't make sense. And he said those trees were there. And the jury was... she talked about the Aguilar case and some of the other cases that were last summer where he was involved in, but Kurt Bunch was the investigator that was sitting next to the DA in court, which was Marlissa Ferreira, and it was a Percy Martinez case. And so the judge sends out the jury, tells them to go to lunch. Judge Aniga asks where the DA's where she's going on this. And she says there's numerous cases with the sheriff's office that Marlissa Ferreira herself was on these cases, and the DA investigator sat in court next to her as a lead investigator. Percy Martinez argued this case is his case. It was last summer. He represented Aguilar. Marlissa Ferreira was the prosecutor. Kirk Bunch was the investigator. And the case was about 12 years old. They had multiple investigators throughout the years. They finally located the subject in Mexico and brought him back. He says a totally different type of case than what we're talking to now. Is a totally different situation. Kurt Bunch and the DA task force was on the lead on April 2nd, 2012. Kurt Bunch, and they've testified to that he was on the case 4/2 of 12. Corey Brown was brought in May, toward the end of May of 2012. He says it may have been in the early part of June. And he was brought in specifically for evidence and to write search warrants. There's a lot of evidence that had already been collected to put in the search warrants, the affidavits. And he says he's not going to go into the Aguilar case with this because it'll delay this thing forever to talk about this case. Judge Aniga is asking Mr. Ferreira to establish is she going to establish other sheriff's office cases that Kurt Bunch took the lead? And Hans chimed in and said the question phrased that Corey Brown was the lead, then the DA investigator is sitting here in trial, and that's exactly how Marlissa phrased it. But there's no foundation of anyone else that could be heard in that regard to this. The DA made a general statement. So she's saying that, Hans is saying that there's no foundation of her asking that question or where she's going with this. She just likes to blurt questions out of the blue and doesn't lay a foundation for things. Jai Gelhel argued that Kurt Bunch can testify to the lead in the investigation. Corey Brown would be just simply hearsay. And they can locate that in all the other cases too if they really want to go down that road. Judge Aniga said that Corey Brown can only testify to his personal knowledge. So stay on his personal knowledge. She's kind of going on a fishing expedition with a few things and doesn't know where he's going or what he's doing. She also warned Marlissa Ferreira to be careful not to open up a door where she becomes a witness due to her being involved in a case that she wants to keep talking about and ends up putting her on the witness stand because of it. So that's where we broke for lunch. The judge has given her warnings like this before, but she kind of runs off the seat of her pants anyway, and sometimes it gets in trouble, like with the financial issues that she brought up recently, and like when Beverly Woody, she was told it's not going to work out well with Beverly Woody in the preliminary hearing, and she put her on the stand anyway, and it didn't work out well. So that's where we're at. We're coming back at 1:30 this afternoon with the jury to continue on with more Corey Brown. Don't forget the podcast tonight at 6 o'clock.